The sound of a gunshot echoed through the dusty main street of Silver Creek, Montana Territory, 1878. But Olivia Lawson barely flinched as the bullet whizzed over her head, too consumed by her own internal battle to care about the drunken brawl outside the saloon. She stood on the wooden boardwalk, clutching a doctor's note that had just shattered the last remnant of hope in her 25-year-old heart. "Miss, you might want to step inside," a deep voice suggested from behind her. "Those fools are likely to kill someone with their poor aim." Olivia turned, momentarily distracted from her grief, to find herself looking up at a tall man with sun-weathered skin and kind eyes the color of a summer sky. His cowboy hat was pushed back slightly, revealing sandy brown hair that curled at the edges. "Let them," she replied, her voice hollow. "What difference would it make?" The stranger's brow furrowed as he studied her face. "Now that's a mighty dark thought for such a fine day. Fine for some, perhaps." Olivia crumpled the paper in her fist, wishing she could as easily crush the doctor's words that were now etched into her mind. The diagnosis was unequivocal: she would never bear children. The cowboy seemed to sense her distress. "Name's Jackson Avery," he said, removing his hat in a gesture of respect. "Most folks call me Jack." "Olivia Lawson," she replied automatically, though she hardly cared for introductions at that moment. "And I'd prefer to be alone, Mr. Avery." Another shot rang out, closer this time, splintering the wooden post just inches from where they stood. In one fluid motion, Jackson pulled Olivia against the wall of the mercantile, shielding her with his broad shoulders. "Seems the good Lord has other ideas about leaving you alone just now," he said with a hint of a smile that didn't quite mask his concern. "Let me escort you somewhere safer, Miss Lawson." Olivia wanted to refuse, but the fight across the street was escalating. Several more men had joined in, and the sheriff was nowhere to be seen. "Very well," she conceded. "I was heading back to my boarding house." They walked in silence for a few moments, the sounds of the brawl fading behind them. Jackson seemed content to respect her quiet mood, but something about his steady presence beside her loosened the tight knot in Olivia's chest. "I received bad news today," she found herself saying, though she hadn't intended to share anything with this stranger. Jackson nodded. "I figured it might be something like that. Care to talk about it? It's not something a lady discusses with a gentleman she's just met." "Fair enough," he replied easily. "Though sometimes it's easier to tell troubles to someone who doesn't know all your yesterdays." Olivia contemplated his words as they turned onto Willow Street, where Mrs. Finch's boarding house stood with its neat white fence and well-tended garden. Something about Jackson Avery's straightforward manner made her want to unburden herself. "The doctor confirmed what I've suspected for years," she said abruptly. "I'll never be a mother." The words hung in the air between them, and Olivia braced herself for the pitying response she dreaded. Instead, Jackson stopped walking and turned to face her fully, his expression thoughtful rather than sympathetic. "Then watch what heaven can do," he said with quiet certainty. Olivia blinked, taken aback by his unexpected response. "I beg your pardon. My ma used to say that when things seemed impossible, watch what heaven can do. She believed there were more ways than one for dreams to come true." "That's a lovely sentiment, Mr. Avery, but I'm afraid biology doesn't bend to wishful thinking." Jackson smiled, a warm, genuine smile that seemed to light his entire face. "Perhaps not, Miss Lawson, but I've seen enough miracles in my time to know that life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it." Olivia wanted to dismiss his words as empty comfort, but something in his eyes, a sincerity that couldn't be feigned, gave her pause. "Thank you for seeing me safely home," she said instead, gesturing to the boarding house. "My pleasure." He placed his hat back on his head. "I hope our paths cross again, Miss Lawson." As she watched him walk away, Olivia couldn't have known that this chance encounter would be the first of many, or that the cowboy's cryptic words would prove more prophetic than either of them could imagine. The next morning, Olivia rose early, as was her habit. The schoolhouse where she taught wouldn't open for another 2 weeks, giving her time to prepare for the new term. She had come to Silver Creek 3 years ago, fresh from Teachers College in Boston, determined to make a difference in this frontier town. Teaching had become her purpose, her way of mothering the 30-odd children who filled her classroom each day. But it wasn't the same as having a child of her own, a truth that pierced her heart anew each morning. Olivia dressed methodically in a simple blue calico dress, pinned her chestnut hair into a neat bun, and headed downstairs. Mrs. Finch, a plump widow with a perpetual smile, was already in the kitchen, kneading dough for the day's bread. "Good morning, my dear," she greeted Olivia warmly. "You're up with the roosters again." "I thought I'd walk to the schoolhouse and begin organizing for the new term," Olivia replied, accepting the cup of coffee Mrs. Finch poured for her. "Such dedication. Those children are blessed to have you." Mrs. Finch beamed, unaware of how her words twisted in Olivia's heart. "Oh, before I forget, there was some excitement at the Peterson farm yesterday. Their oldest boy fell from the hayloft and broke his arm, something terrible. Poor Thomas, is he all right? He will be, thanks to that new ranch hand they hired. Apparently, he knew just what to do, set the bone right there in the barn before riding the boy all the way to Doc Wilson's." Olivia sipped her coffee thoughtfully. "That was fortunate. Do you know who the ranch hand is? Some cowboy who drifted in last week, Jackson something or other. Tall fellow, nice manners for a cowpoke." Olivia nearly choked on her coffee. "Jackson Avery, that's the one. Do you know him? We met briefly yesterday," Olivia said, trying to sound casual. "He intervened when that gunfight broke out near the Mercantile." Mrs. Finch clucked her tongue. "Shameful business, that was. Sheriff Tanner finally sobered up enough to lock those troublemakers in the jail, but this Jackson seems a decent sort. Mrs. Peterson says he has a gentle way with their horses, can calm even that mean-spirited stallion they've been trying to break." Olivia finished her coffee, strangely affected by this additional information about the cowboy who had occupied her thoughts more than once during the restless night. "I should be going," she said, rising from the table. "I have much to do before term begins." "Take some biscuits, Mrs. Finch insisted, wrapping several in a cloth napkin. "You're too thin as it is." Outside, the morning air was crisp and clear, promising another scorching day as the sun climbed higher. Silver Creek was beginning to stir. The blacksmith's forge was already glowing, and Mr. Olson was sweeping the boardwalk in front of his general store. "Morning, Miss Lawson," he called as she passed. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" Olivia returned his greeting with a polite smile, continuing toward the white clapboard schoolhouse at the edge of town. She loved this building with its bell tower and large windows that let in ample light. Inside, the room smelled of chalk dust and pine soap, comfortingly familiar. She had just begun inventorying her supplies when a soft knock at the door interrupted her. Turning, she was startled to find Jackson Avery standing in the doorway, hat in hand. "Mr. Avery," she said, unable to hide her surprise. "What brings you here?" He held up a leather-bound book. "Mrs. Peterson mentioned you were the school teacher. Thought you might have use for this." Olivia accepted the book, a beautifully illustrated collection of American folk tales. "This is lovely, thank you. Found it in a trunk the Petersons had stored in their barn. They said I could have it, but I figure it'll do more good here." Olivia ran her fingers over the embossed cover. "The children will adore these stories." She glanced up at him, curious. "Mrs. Finch mentioned you helped Thomas Peterson yesterday. Are you trained in medicine?" Jackson leaned against the doorframe, his posture relaxed but respectful. "Not formally. Picked up a few things riding with a doctor during the war, learned how to set bones, stitch wounds, basic survival skills out here. The war, you fought in the Civil War, joined up at 18. Served with the Union cavalry until Appomattox." His expression grew distant for a moment. "Feels like another lifetime now," Olivia calculated quickly. That would make him at least 35, though he didn't look much over 30. "You've had quite a journey from soldier to cowboy." "Life rarely follows the trails we expect, Miss Lawson," he said with a slight smile. "Been a bit of everything since the war, cattle driver, horse trainer, even tried my hand at prospecting for a spell." "And what brings you to Silver Creek?" she asked, finding herself genuinely interested. "Honest work, open sky," he shrugged, and a feeling that it was where I needed to be. Something in the way he said it made Olivia wonder if there was more to his story, but she didn't press. Instead, she placed the book carefully on her desk. Well, your arrival was certainly fortunate for Thomas. Will you be staying long? Mr. Peterson has offered me steady work. His arthritis makes it hard for him to manage the ranch alone. Jackson shifted his weight, seeming almost hesitant before adding, I was sorry about your news yesterday. Hope I didn't overstep with what I said. Olivia stiffened slightly. In the light of day, her impulsive confidence felt embarrassing. Not at all, though I'm afraid I don't share your optimistic view. Some things can't be changed, no matter how much we might wish it. Maybe not changed, he conceded, but there's different paths to the same destination. Before Olivia could respond, the schoolhouse door burst open and a small whirlwind in the form of 8-year-old Sarah Miller rushed in. Miss Lawson, Pa said I might find you here. Can I help organize the books like I did last year, please? Olivia smiled genuinely for the first time that day. Of course, Sarah, I was just about to start on the bookshelf. Sarah noticed Jackson and immediately tucked herself halfway behind Olivia, suddenly shy. Sarah, this is Mr. Avery. He's working at the Peterson Ranch. Jackson knelt down to the girl's level. Pleased to meet you, Miss Sarah. I hear you're quite the helper. The girl nodded solemnly. I'm the best book organizer in all of Silver Creek. I believe it, he replied seriously. That's a mighty important job. Sarah beamed at the recognition, then tugged at Olivia's skirt. Can I show him how I do it? If Mr. Avery has the time, Olivia said, glancing at Jackson questioningly. For such an important demonstration, absolutely. He winked at Sarah, who giggled and immediately dragged him toward the bookshelf. For the next half hour, Olivia watched in amazement as Jackson patiently followed Sarah's elaborate system for organizing books by size, color, and what she deemed their happiness level. He asked thoughtful questions and praised her ingenuity, treating the child's ideas with the same respect he might accord an adult's. When Sarah's father arrived to collect her, the girl was reluctant to leave. Can Mr. Avery come back tomorrow? She asked Olivia hopefully. Mr. Avery has his own work to do, Olivia explained gently. But perhaps we'll see him around town. After they left, a comfortable silence settled between Olivia and Jackson as they finished straightening the shelf Sarah had reorganized according to her unique system. You're good with children, Olivia observed, handing him the last book. They're easy to be good with, he replied. They haven't learned to hide their hearts yet. The simple truth of his statement struck Olivia deeply. Is that what you think adults do, hide their hearts? Jackson considered for a moment. Most do. Life teaches hard lessons, gets easier to protect yourself than risk the hurt. Is that what you do? She asked, surprising herself with her boldness. His blue eyes met hers directly. Used to, starting to think that's no way to live. The air between them seemed to thicken, charged with something Olivia couldn't quite name. She broke eye contact first, busying herself with wiping chalk dust from the desktop. I should let you get back to your preparations, Jackson said, sensing her discomfort. He placed his hat on his head and moved toward the door. Thank you for letting me stay. It was refreshing. Thank you for the book, she replied. The children will treasure it. At the doorway, he paused. Miss Lawson? Yes. Sometimes the families we make aren't the ones we expected. With a tip of his hat, he was gone, leaving Olivia to ponder his words. Over the next 2 weeks, Olivia found herself watching for Jackson around town. Their paths crossed several times at the general store, where he helped her carry a heavy package to the schoolhouse. At church on Sunday, where he sat quietly in the back pew but joined enthusiastically in the hymns. And once at the creek, where she discovered him teaching 3 boys how to fish with hand-tied flies. Each encounter revealed another layer of the man, his patience, his quiet strength, his unexpected depth of knowledge on subjects ranging from astronomy to literature. Yet he spoke little of his past beyond general references to his travels, and Olivia sensed he carried sorrows he chose not to name. The first day of the new school term arrived with perfect autumn weather. Olivia stood at the schoolhouse door, greeting each child by name as they arrived. Several introduced her to younger siblings starting school for the first time, their faces a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "Good morning, Miss Lawson," Thomas Peterson called, his splinted arm displayed prominently like a badge of honor. "Mr. Avery said to give you this." He handed Olivia a small package wrapped in brown paper. Inside was a handcrafted wooden whistle carved in the shape of a bird. "He said it's for getting our attention when we're being too rowdy," Thomas explained with a grin. "He said it's gentler than shouting but louder than clapping." Olivia turned the beautifully crafted whistle in her hand, touched by the thoughtfulness of the gift. "Please thank Mr. Avery for me. This will certainly come in handy." As if summoned by his name, Jackson appeared at the edge of the schoolyard, leading his horse. He lifted his hand in greeting but didn't approach, seeming content to observe from a distance. The school bell rang, and Olivia reluctantly turned her attention to herding her students inside. When she glanced back, Jackson was gone, but the whistle in her pocket felt warm against her hip. The first week of school passed in a blur of activity. Olivia barely had time to think about Jackson Avery between lesson plans and grading, though she noticed his absence at Sunday services and felt an unexpected disappointment. On Friday afternoon, as she was walking home with an armful of papers to grade, the sky darkened suddenly. The threatening storm that had been building all day finally unleashed its fury, sending sheets of rain cascading down. Olivia quickened her pace, but within seconds she was drenched. "Miss Lawson." She turned to see Jackson riding toward her, his horse splashing through the rapidly forming puddles. "You'll catch your death," he called over the downpour. Without waiting for a response, he dismounted and swept his oilskin coat around her shoulders. "Come on, the general store's closest." They made a dash for the store, Olivia clutching her papers to her chest beneath the coat. Inside, Mr. Olson looked up from his ledger with concern. "Goodness, Miss Lawson, you're soaked through. Mary," he called to his wife, "fetch a towel for the teacher." "I'm ruining your coat," Olivia said to Jackson as water pooled at her feet. "That's what it's for," he replied, shaking rain from his hat. "Your papers." Olivia carefully unwrapped the bundle. "Only the edges got wet. They'll dry." Mrs. Olson appeared with towels and a concerned frown. "You'll both catch pneumonia. Come to the back, I've got coffee brewing." In the Olsons' cozy back room, warmed by a pot-bellied stove, Olivia patted her hair dry while Jackson stood respectfully near the door. "Sit down, young man," Mrs. Olson instructed. "You're dripping on my clean floor." Jackson obediently took a seat at the small table, accepting the steaming mug she offered. "Thank you, madam. Where have you been hiding yourself?" Mrs. Olson asked as she poured coffee for Olivia. "Haven't seen you in town much this week." "Mr. Peterson sent me up to the north pasture to check on a stray heifer. Just got back this morning." "Find her?" Mr. Olson asked, joining them. "And her new calf?" Jackson smiled. "Had to carry the little one part of the way back. Mama was too exhausted to manage on her own." The image of Jackson tenderly carrying a newborn calf made Olivia's heart flutter strangely. She focused on warming her hands around the coffee mug, conscious of his gaze occasionally settling on her. "Storm's getting worse," Mr. Olson observed, peering through the window at the sheets of rain. "Might have to wait it out a while." "I should get back to Mrs. Finch's," Olivia said, rising. "She'll worry if I'm late." "Nonsense," Mrs. Olson declared. "I'll send Mary over to let her know you're safe with us. No sense in getting soaked again when the storm might pass soon." Trapped by good intentions and practical wisdom, Olivia resigned herself to an unexpected interlude with Jackson Avery. As the Olsons bustled about their store, attending to the few customers brave enough to venture out in the deluge, she found herself alone with the cowboy. "I never thanked you properly for the whistle," she said, breaking the slightly awkward silence. "It's beautifully made." "My pleasure. Has it proved useful?" "Very, though the children are now convinced you can talk to birds since it sounds so realistic." Jackson chuckled, a warm, rich sound that made Olivia smile in response. "Let them believe it. A little magic never hurt anyone's education." "Do you miss it? Teaching, I mean." His eyebrows rose in surprise. "How did you know I taught?" Olivia blushed slightly. The way you explain things to children, it's not just patience, it's pedagogy. And you quoted Emerson the other day without thinking about it, not common knowledge for most cowboys. Jackson looked impressed. You're observant, Miss Lawson. Yes, I taught for a few years after the war at a school for freedmen in Mississippi. This revelation surprised Olivia. Such schools were controversial even now, 13 years after the war's end. That must have been challenging work. Most worthwhile things are. His expression grew distant. Had to leave after some local trouble. The school was burned. I'm so sorry, Olivia said softly, understanding now some of the shadows she sometimes glimpsed behind his smile. Were any of the students hurt? No, thank God. We'd received warnings and had evacuated everyone. He sipped his coffee, clearly uncomfortable with pursuing the subject. Your students are fortunate to have you. I've heard nothing but praise from the parents. Accepting his desire to change the topic, Olivia said, teaching gives my life purpose, especially now that. She trailed off, unwilling to revisit her private grief. Children have a way of finding the people who need them, Jackson observed, and who they need in return. The simple insight resonated deeply with Olivia. She had indeed found healing in her relationships with her students, though the ache of never having her own child remained a constant companion. May I ask you something personal, Mr. Avery? Jack, he corrected gently. And yes, you may. Did you ever marry, have children of your own? A flicker of pain crossed his features, so briefly she might have imagined it. No, came close once, but it wasn't meant to be. I'm sorry if my question was too forward. Not at all, it's a natural curiosity. He studied her face for a moment. And you, was there someone before? Before I learned I couldn't have children, Olivia finished when he hesitated. Yes, we were engaged briefly, but when he learned of my condition, he decided he wanted a different future. Jack's jaw tightened. He was a fool. The vehemence in his voice startled her. He wanted a large family. I couldn't give him that. A man who loves truly sees beyond what's lacking to what's present, Jack said firmly. Forgive my bluntness, but anyone who would discard a woman of your intelligence and heart over something beyond your control doesn't deserve you. Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks, unused to such direct praise. That's kind of you to say, not kind, honest. His blue eyes held her steadily. There are many ways to build a family, Miss Lawson. Blood is only one of them. Before she could respond, Mrs. Olson returned, announcing that the rain had slackened. Though there's mud everywhere, she added. Mr. Avery, would you be so good as to see Miss Lawson safely to her boarding house? It would be my privilege, Jack replied, standing and retrieving his now somewhat drier hat. Outside, the air was fresh and clean, the storm having washed away the usual dust. Jack insisted Olivia keep his coat, despite her protests that he would get wet. I've weathered worse than a little rain, he assured her with a smile, leading his horse by the reins as they walked. They made their way carefully through the muddy street, Jack occasionally offering his arm when the footing seemed particularly treacherous. Each time their bodies connected, Olivia felt a curious warmth that had nothing to do with the heavy coat she wore. At Mrs. Finch's gate, Olivia reluctantly removed the coat and returned it to Jack. Thank you for coming to my rescue, again. Just happened to be in the right place, he replied modestly, twice now. I'm beginning to think you're following me, Mr. Avery, she teased, surprising herself with her boldness. His smile widened. If I were, would that be unwelcome? The question hung between them, fraught with possibility. Olivia's heart beat faster as she considered her answer. No, she said finally, it wouldn't be unwelcome at all. Something shifted in Jack's expression, relief, perhaps, or pleasure. In that case, would you allow me to call on you properly? Perhaps this Sunday after church. I would like that, Olivia replied, her voice steadier than she felt. Until Sunday, then. He bowed slightly, a courtly gesture that seemed at odds with his rugged appearance but somehow perfectly suited to the man she was coming to know. As she watched him lead his horse back toward the main street, Olivia felt something unfamiliar stirring in her chest, a fragile, tentative hope that she had thought forever extinguished. Sunday arrived with clear skies and mild temperatures. Olivia took unusual care with her appearance, selecting her best dress, a sage green that complemented her eyes, and arranging her hair in a more elaborate style than her usual practical bun. Mrs. Finch noticed immediately. "My goodness, you look lovely today," she commented as Olivia came downstairs. "Special occasion, just making an effort for the Lord's Day," Olivia replied, not quite ready to discuss Jack's invitation. At church, she found herself watching the door, disappointment growing as the service began with no sign of Jack. She tried to focus on Reverend Miller's sermon about faith in the face of adversity, but her thoughts kept wandering. As the congregation rose for the final hymn, the church door opened quietly and Jack slipped in, looking slightly disheveled. He caught her eye across the room and mouthed what looked like an apology. After the service, as people gathered on the church steps to socialize, Olivia made her way toward him. "I was beginning to think you'd changed your mind," she said, keeping her tone light to mask her earlier worry. "Never," he replied firmly. "One of the Peterson horses went into labor this morning. Difficult birth, had to help turn the foal. Couldn't leave until I knew they were both safe." Olivia's mild irritation dissolved immediately. "Are they all right? Mother and daughter doing fine now?" His smile was tired but genuine. "I apologize for my appearance. Didn't have time to go back and change." Indeed, though he had clearly made an effort to clean up, his shirt was wrinkled and his hair slightly damp, as if hastily washed. "No apology needed. Your reason was important." "Still, I had hoped to make a better impression." He gestured ruefully at his clothes. "I understand if you'd prefer to postpone our outing." "Not at all," Olivia assured him. "Unless you're too tired for time with you, never." The simple sincerity in his voice made Olivia's heart skip. "I thought we might take a walk by the creek, if that suits you. It's peaceful there on Sundays." They bid farewell to Reverend Miller and walked together through town toward the creek that gave Silver Creek its name. Several townspeople greeted them with curious glances, and Olivia knew that by evening, speculation about their relationship would be circulating through Mrs. Finch's boarding house and beyond. Strangely, the thought didn't trouble her as it might have once. At the creek, they found a sunny spot where a fallen log provided a natural bench. The water gurgled pleasantly over stones, and late wildflowers dotted the banks with splashes of color. "It's beautiful here," Olivia said, settling her skirts around her. "I don't come this way often enough." "Nature has a way of reminding us what's important," Jack replied, sitting beside her with a respectful distance between them. "Out here, a man's troubles seem smaller." "Is that why you chose the life of a cowboy, to make your troubles smaller?" Jack considered her question thoughtfully. "Partly, perhaps. After the war, I couldn't settle. Felt restless in cities, trapped by walls and expectations. Out on the range, there's room to breathe, to think." "And what do you think about out there under the stars?" His eyes met hers, blue and steady. "Lately, you, Miss Lawson." Olivia's breath caught at his directness. "Me, from the moment you stood on that boardwalk, facing down danger with more courage than sense," he said with a gentle smile. "I haven't been able to get you out of my mind." "I was hardly courageous," she protested. "More numb." "Pain takes courage to bear," Jack said simply, "and you bear yours with grace." No one had ever spoken to her with such perceptive kindness. Most people either avoided the subject of her inability to have children or offered platitudes that rang hollow. "I don't feel graceful most days," she admitted. "Just incomplete." Jack was quiet for a moment, watching the water. "When I was a boy, my grandmother had this beautiful quilt. It had been damaged in a house fire, nearly a quarter of it burned away. Instead of discarding it, she stitched a new section made from scraps of my grandfather's shirts after he passed. Said it was more precious for having been mended." He turned to face her directly. "You're not incomplete, Olivia. You're exactly who you're meant to be." The use of her given name, spoken with such tenderness, brought unexpected tears to her eyes. "How can you be so certain? You barely know me." "Some things a soul just recognizes," he replied simply. They sat in companionable silence for a while, listening to the creek and the occasional call of birds. It was a different kind of intimacy than Olivia had experienced before, unhurried, comfortable, yet charged with possibility. "May I ask about your family?" she ventured eventually. You mentioned your grandmother and mother. Jack nodded. Both gone now. My father died at Gettysburg. Mother followed a few years after the war consumption. I have a younger sister, Emma, married to a banker in Denver. 2 nephews I try to visit when I can. You must miss them. Every day. But they understand my need to wander. He smiled ruefully. Though Emma says I'll need to settle down eventually before I'm too old and stubborn for anyone to put up with me. And what do you think? Olivia asked, her heart beating a little faster, about settling down. Jack's gaze was warm as it rested on her face. I think the right person could make anywhere feel like home. The implications of his words hung in the air between them, neither rushing to fill the charged silence. Finally, Jack stood and offered his hand to help her up. May I walk you back to town? I'd like to call on you again if you're amenable. Olivia placed her hand in his, feeling the calluses that spoke of hard work and the gentleness with which he held her fingers. I would like that very much. As they walked back toward Silver Creek, their conversation turned to lighter topics: books they had enjoyed, places they had seen, humorous incidents with their respective charges. Olivia found herself laughing more than she had in months, drawn to Jack's understated wit and thoughtful observations. At Mrs. Finch's gate, Jack hesitated. Would you do me the honor of joining me for dinner next Friday evening? The hotel dining room serves a decent meal. Yes, Olivia replied without hesitation. Thank you. He tipped his hat. Until Friday, then. Olivia watched him walk away, his tall figure silhouetted against the setting sun. For the first time in a very long time, she felt a flutter of something she had thought forever lost to her hope. The days leading up to Friday passed both too quickly and too slowly for Olivia. She saw Jack briefly around town, once helping the blacksmith with a difficult horse, another time unloading supplies at the general store, but their interactions were limited to polite greetings in the presence of others. Friday evening arrived at last. Olivia wore her best dress, a deep blue silk she had brought from Boston but rarely had occasion to wear in Silver Creek. Mrs. Finch helped her arrange her hair, making knowing comments about that handsome cowboy that Olivia pretended not to hear. Jack arrived promptly at 6, and Olivia's breath caught at the sight of him. He had clearly made an effort for the occasion, wearing a well-tailored jacket and crisp white shirt that transformed him from rugged cowboy to distinguished gentleman. You look beautiful, he said simply as she descended the stairs. As do you, she replied, then blushed at her forward comment. Jack's smile deepened. Not sure anyone's called me beautiful before, but I'll happily accept the compliment from you, Mrs. Finch shooed them out the door with instructions not to be too late, her expression a mixture of approval and maternal concern. The hotel dining room was the finest establishment in Silver Creek, which wasn't saying much by Eastern standards, but represented luxury on the frontier. The maitre d' showed them to a corner table set with white linen and the hotel's best china. I took the liberty of ordering a bottle of wine, Jack said as they were seated. I hope that's acceptable. It's lovely, Olivia assured him, touched by his thoughtfulness. As they dined on surprisingly well-prepared roast beef and vegetables, their conversation flowed easily. Jack told her about his travels after the war, his time on a cattle drive from Texas, a winter spent trapping in the Colorado mountains, a brief stint as a horse trainer for a wealthy rancher in California. You've lived several lifetimes of adventure, Olivia remarked, fascinated by his stories. What brought you back east to Montana Territory? A shadow crossed his face. A promise to an old friend. He was dying, asked me to check on his sister who had settled out this way. Jack sipped his wine. When I found her, she'd already passed influenza, took her the previous winter. But something about this area called to me, felt right somehow. And now, will you stay in Silver Creek? The question held more significance than Olivia had intended, but Jack seemed to understand the deeper meaning. That depends, he said carefully, his eyes meeting hers across the table. On whether I have reason to. Olivia's heart quickened at the implications. And what might constitute a sufficient reason, Mr. Avery? Jack, he reminded her gently. And I think you know the answer to that, Olivia. The use of her given name, spoken with such warmth, sent a pleasant shiver through her. They were interrupted by the waiter bringing dessert apple pie with fresh cream, giving Olivia a moment to compose herself. As they walked back to the boarding house under a canopy of stars, Jack offered his arm and Olivia took it, relishing the solid strength of him beside her. At Mrs. Finch's gate, they paused, reluctant to end the evening. "I've enjoyed tonight immensely," Jack said, his voice low and sincere. "As have I," Olivia replied, suddenly shy under his intense gaze. "May I call on you again? Perhaps tomorrow if you're free. I'd like that." Jack hesitated, then slowly, giving her every opportunity to withdraw, he leaned forward and pressed a gentle kiss to her cheek. "Good night, Olivia." The spot where his lips had touched her skin tingled as she watched him walk away. Olivia raised her fingers to her cheek, knowing with sudden clarity that she was falling in love with Jackson Avery. The next month passed in a whirlwind of quiet joy for Olivia. Jack called on her regularly, taking her for walks along the creek, accompanying her to church on Sundays, and once surprising her with a picnic on a rare, warm October afternoon. They spoke of books, dreams, and increasingly, of feelings neither had expected to discover. Silver Creek noticed their courtship, of course. Small towns thrived on such observations, and opinions ranged from approval to speculation about the mysterious Cowboy's past. But Olivia found herself caring less about others' perceptions as her own feelings for Jack deepened. One crisp Saturday in late October, Jack invited her to the Peterson ranch. "They're having a small harvest celebration," he explained. "Nothing fancy, just good food and company, and I'd like to show you something." Curious, Olivia agreed. Jack arrived at noon on horseback, leading a gentle mare for her to ride. "It's been years since I've ridden," she admitted nervously. "Daisy here is steady as they come," he assured her, helping her mount. "She's carried Mrs. Peterson safely for 10 years, won't let you fall." The ride to the Peterson ranch took them through golden meadows and stands of aspen trees bright with autumn color. Jack rode beside her, occasionally pointing out wildlife or sharing stories about the land they crossed. At the ranch, they were greeted warmly by the Peterson family, and several neighboring ranchers gathered for the celebration. Tables had been set up in the yard, laden with food, and children darted about, engaged in games of tag and hide and seek. "Miss Lawson." Thomas Peterson waved enthusiastically, his arm now healed. "Come see the new foal Mr. Avery helped deliver." Jack exchanged an amused glance with Olivia. "Seems I'll have to show you my surprise later." The afternoon passed pleasantly as Olivia was introduced to the tight-knit community of ranchers and their families. She noticed how easily Jack fit among them, respected for his skill with horses and his willingness to lend a hand wherever needed. As the sun began to lower in the sky, Jack found her watching the children play a game of horseshoes. "Ready for that surprise now?" he asked, his eyes twinkling with anticipation. "I've been curious all day," she admitted. He led her away from the celebration, toward a small rise behind the main house. As they crested the hill, Olivia gasped at what awaited them. A small cabin stood in a protected hollow, surrounded by aspens. It was simple but well constructed, with a stone chimney and a small, covered porch. Smoke curled from the chimney, suggesting someone had prepared for their arrival. "Jack, what is this?" "Mr. Peterson offered me this land as part payment for my work," he explained, leading her toward the cabin. "Said it was going to waste, and he'd rather see a good man build something on it." Olivia's mind whirled with implications as they approached the cabin. "You're building a home here?" "I am." He stopped at the bottom of the porch steps, turning to face her fully. "Olivia, I know we've only known each other a short while, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Her heart hammered in her chest as he took both her hands in his. "I love you," he said simply. "I think I started falling in love with you that first day on the boardwalk when you looked at me with those brave, wounded eyes. Every day since has only confirmed what my heart knew immediately, that you are the woman I've been searching for my whole life." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes. "Jack, you don't need to say anything yet," he assured her. "I know this is sudden. I just wanted you to see this place, to understand that I'm putting down roots here. For the first time since the war, I want to stay somewhere, build something lasting." His thumbs traced gentle circles on her palms. "With you, if you'll have me." Olivia looked from his earnest face to the cabin behind him, a tangible symbol of his intentions, his hope for their future. "I love you too," she whispered, the words coming naturally, inevitably. "But Jack, you know I can't." He placed a gentle finger against her lips. "I know you can't bear children. It changes nothing about how I feel for you, nothing about what I want for our future together." "But don't you want a family?" she asked, voicing the fear that had haunted her since her diagnosis. "I want you," he said firmly. "The rest we'll figure out together. There are children who need homes, love, and we have plenty of both to give." As if to emphasize his point, he gestured toward the cabin door. "Would you like to see inside? It's not finished yet, but I've been working on it whenever I can spare time from the ranch." Still reeling from his declaration, Olivia nodded. Jack opened the door and ushered her into the warm interior. The main room was simply furnished with a table, chairs, and a rocking chair placed near the fireplace where a small fire burned. Through an open doorway, she glimpsed a bedroom with a handcrafted bed frame, though no mattress yet. Everything was clean and well made, if sparse. "It's not much yet," Jack said, watching her expression carefully, "but there's room to expand." "I thought maybe a bigger kitchen here." He gestured to one wall, and perhaps another bedroom or two there, for he stopped, seeming to realize he might be presuming too much. "That is, if you ever wanted to consider." Olivia closed the distance between them and, in a moment of uncharacteristic boldness, pressed her lips to his. Jack froze momentarily in surprise, then gathered her gently in his arms, returning her kiss with tender passion. When they finally parted, both breathless, Jack rested his forehead against hers. "Does this mean you're considering my proposal? Because I should probably actually propose properly before you accept." Olivia laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. "It means I'm open to hearing a proper proposal, yes." Jack's smile was radiant as he stepped back, still holding her hands, and dropped to one knee. "Olivia Lawson, I love you with my whole heart. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" "Yes," she replied without hesitation. "Yes, I will." He rose and swept her into another kiss, this one filled with promise and joy. As the setting sun cast golden light through the cabin windows, Olivia felt the final fragments of her old grief begin to dissolve, replaced by a new hope for the future, a future with Jack. The news of their engagement spread quickly through Silver Creek. Most reactions were positive, though some questioned the wisdom of such a swift courtship. Mrs. Finch defended them fiercely, declaring that when two souls recognize each other, time is just a number. Reverend Miller agreed to perform the ceremony in 4 weeks' time, giving them just enough opportunity to prepare. Jack worked tirelessly on the cabin, often joined by neighboring ranchers who pitched in to help complete the roof and finish the interior before winter set in fully. Olivia continued teaching, though her students were now more interested in her upcoming wedding than in their arithmetic lessons. Sarah Miller appointed herself unofficial wedding planner, presenting Olivia with elaborate drawings of flower arrangements and dress designs. "Are you nervous, Mrs. Finch?" asked Olivia one evening as they sat by the fire, Olivia sewing lace onto her wedding dress, a simple cream-colored gown that had once belonged to her mother. "Not about marrying Jack," Olivia replied honestly, "but about after." The older woman nodded, understanding. "You've told him about your condition?" "Yes, he says it doesn't matter to him, and you believe him." Olivia considered the question seriously. "I do, but I worry he may feel differently years from now." Mrs. Finch patted her hand. "My dear, I've observed that man when he looks at you. He sees everything you are, not what you can or cannot give him. That's rare and precious." Her words comforted Olivia, reinforcing what her heart already knew, that Jack's love was genuine and unconditional. The week before the wedding, Jack surprised her after school, waiting outside with his horse. "Can you spare an hour?" he asked. "There's something I want to show you." Curious, Olivia agreed, and they rode together toward their cabin. As they approached, she noticed smoke from the chimney and lights in the windows. "Is someone there?" she asked. Jack smiled mysteriously. "You could say that." Inside, the cabin was transformed. A colorful quilt adorned the now completed bed, curtains hung at the windows, and a small table was set with a simple but elegant dinner for two. But what caught Olivia's attention was the dark-haired woman bustling about the kitchen area. "Emma," Jack called, "come meet my fiancé." The woman turned, and Olivia immediately saw the family resemblance, the same blue eyes, though set in a softer face framed by dark curls. "Olivia," Emma exclaimed warmly, wiping her hands on her apron before embracing Olivia like a long-lost sister. "I've been dying to meet you." Jack's letters have been full of nothing but praise for his remarkable schoolteacher. Stunned but pleased, Olivia returned the embrace. "I had no idea you were coming." "Jack arranged everything," Emma explained, casting a fond glance at her brother. "Telegraphed me weeks ago, insisting I had to be here for the wedding. My husband and the boys will arrive tomorrow. They're visiting his sister in Bozeman first." Over dinner, Emma regaled Olivia with stories of their childhood and Jack's younger days, much to his mock chagrin. Olivia found herself warming immediately to the vivacious woman, who clearly adored her brother and seemed genuinely delighted about their marriage. After the meal, Emma tactfully announced she needed to return to town to check on her accommodations at the hotel, leaving Jack and Olivia alone in their soon-to-be home. "Thank you for bringing her," Olivia said, deeply touched by his thoughtfulness. "It means so much to meet your family." "She's been eager to meet you," Jack replied, drawing Olivia close. "Fair warning, she's already talking about visiting regularly, says her boys need the influence of a teacher aunt." The casual way he incorporated her into his existing family, making space for her role, even without biological children, brought tears to Olivia's eyes. "What is it?" Jack asked, concerned. "Nothing," she assured him, smiling through her tears. "I'm just very happy." He kissed her gently. "Get used to it. I intend to make you happy for a very long time." The wedding day dawned clear and cold, a perfect late November morning. The church was filled with townsfolk and ranching families from the surrounding area, all gathered to witness the union of the schoolteacher and the cowboy who had captured her heart. Emma helped Olivia dress, pinning wildflowers Jack had somehow procured into her upswept hair. "He's never been happier," she confided as she adjusted Olivia's veil. "I worried about him for years after the war. He seemed lost until he found you." "He saved me too," Olivia admitted. "I was drowning in grief over what I couldn't have. He showed me what I could, Mrs. Finch appeared at the door, dabbing at her eyes. "It's time, my dear. Your groom is waiting." The ceremony itself passed in a blur for Olivia. She would later remember fragments Jack's face as she walked down the aisle toward him, his hands steady as he placed the ring on her finger, the warmth in his voice as he promised to love her in plenty and in want, in joy and in sorrow, all the days of my life. And then they were married, walking back down the aisle together as friends and neighbors applauded and children threw flower petals in their path. The celebration continued at the hotel, where the dining room had been cleared for dancing. Jack and Olivia opened the festivities with a waltz, his hand warm and secure at her waist as he guided her across the floor. "Happy, Mrs. Avery," he murmured in her ear. The new name sent a thrill through her. "Completely, Mr. Avery." As the evening progressed, Olivia found herself watching Jack interact with the children present, spinning little Sarah Miller in a dance, showing Emma's sons how to properly bow to a lady, patiently answering Thomas Peterson's endless questions about horses. In each interaction, she saw the natural father he would be, regardless of biology. Later, as they rode to their cabin in the moonlight, Olivia leaned against Jack's chest, secure in his embrace and in their future together. "Welcome home," he said softly as they approached the cabin, now truly theirs. Inside, the fire had been lit and fresh flowers placed on the table, Emma's doing, no doubt. Jack carried Olivia across the threshold, setting her gently on her feet in the center of their home. That night, as they came together as husband and wife for the first time, Olivia felt the last walls around her heart dissolve completely. In Jack's tender attentions and whispered words of love, she found healing for wounds she had thought would never mend. Winter settled over Silver Creek with a blanket of snow and biting cold. Olivia continued teaching while Jack divided his time between the Peterson Ranch and their own small homestead. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire, planning improvements for the cabin and sharing the events of their days. One particularly bitter January night, as a blizzard raged outside, a pounding at their door startled them both. Jack opened it to find Sheriff Tanner, snow-covered and grim-faced. "Sorry to disturb you folks," he said, stomping snow from his boots, "but we've got a situation in town. Family stranded when their wagon broke down. Mother, father, 3 little ones. The youngest is sick and the hotel's full with that mining delegation." "Bring them here," Olivia said without hesitation, already moving to prepare the small second bedroom they had recently completed. An hour later, the Lewis family was settled in their home, the parents and 2 older children in the spare room, while the feverish toddler, Abigail, remained by the fire under Olivia's watchful eye. "We were heading to my brother's place in Helena," Mr. Lewis explained wearily as Jack provided him with dry clothes. "Lost our farm in Kansas to drought, thought we'd try our luck further west." Throughout the night, Olivia tended to little Abigail, applying cool cloths to her burning forehead and coaxing sips of water between her cracked lips. Jack supported her tirelessly, boiling more water, preparing broth, and offering encouragement when Olivia's eyes grew heavy with fatigue. Dawn broke with the storm still raging, but Abigail's fever finally breaking. The child's mother wept with relief, clasping Olivia's hands in gratitude. "You saved her life," Mrs. Lewis said. "We can never repay you." "No repayment necessary," Olivia assured her, exhausted but fulfilled in a way she had never experienced before. The Lewis family remained with them for a week as the weather cleared and Mr. Lewis repaired their wagon with Jack's help. During that time, Olivia formed a bond with all 3 children, but especially with little Abigail, who followed her everywhere. On the day of their departure, Mrs. Lewis found Olivia alone in the kitchen, preparing provisions for their journey. "You're wonderful with children," she observed. "Do you and Mr. Avery have any of your own yet?" The familiar pang struck Olivia, though less sharply than before. "No, I'm unable to bear children." Instead of the usual pity, Mrs. Lewis looked thoughtful. "Sometimes the children who need us most don't come from our bodies." She hesitated. "We have a situation. My sister died last month, leaving her daughter. She's just 4. My brother-in-law can't care for her alone, but we barely have enough to feed our own. We were going to find her a placement when we reach Helena, but seeing you with Abigail..." Olivia's heart quickened. "Are you suggesting? Would you consider it, taking in Lily? She's a sweet child, quiet but smart. She deserves a good home with people who would cherish her." I would need to discuss this with my husband," Olivia managed, her mind reeling with possibility. That evening, after the Lewis children were asleep, Olivia relayed the conversation to Jack, trying to keep her voice steady despite the hope blooming in her chest. "What do you think?" she asked, searching his face for his reaction. Jack was quiet for a long moment, then smiled slowly. "I think we should prepare the small room for a little girl." "Are you certain?" Olivia pressed. "This is sudden and we've only been married a few months." He took her hands in his. "Do you remember what I said to you that first day? Watch what heaven can do." "This feels like heaven's answer, doesn't it?" Tears filled Olivia's eyes as she nodded, unable to speak through the emotion closing her throat. 2 weeks later, Mr. Lewis returned as promised, this time with a solemn-faced little girl with golden curls and serious gray eyes. Lily surveyed Jack and Olivia cautiously, clutching a worn rag doll to her chest. Olivia knelt to the child's level. "Hello, Lily, we're very happy you've come to stay with us." "Forever?" the girl asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "If that's what you'd like," Jack answered, kneeling beside Olivia, "we'd like that very much." Lily studied them both, then nodded once decisively. "All right." That night, after settling Lily in her new room decorated hastily but lovingly by Olivia with help from the women of Silver Creek, Jack found Olivia standing at the window, gazing at the stars. "Happy?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. More than I ever thought possible, she replied truthfully, leaning back against his solid strength. Thank you for making me believe again. In what? In possibilities. In different paths to the same destination, as you once said. She turned in his arms to face him. In heaven's ability to answer prayers we're afraid to speak aloud. Jack kissed her tenderly. This is just the beginning, Olivia, just the beginning of our family. The adjustment period wasn't without challenges. Lily woke with nightmares, calling for her mother. She was reluctant to attend school, even with Olivia as her teacher. She tested boundaries and retreated into stubborn silence when upset. But there were beautiful moments too, Lily's face lighting up when Jack taught her to ride a gentle pony, her proud smile when she read her first sentence aloud, her small hand slipping trustingly into Olivia's as they walked to church on Sundays. By spring, the adoption was official, with Reverend Miller facilitating the legal paperwork. Lily Avery became their daughter in name as well as heart, and the small cabin expanded to accommodate her growing personality. One evening in early summer, as Jack sat on the porch whittling a wooden horse for Lily while the girl herself helped Olivia in the garden, he paused to watch his family. Olivia looked up, catching his gaze, and smiled a smile of such complete happiness that it took his breath away. Later, with Lily asleep and the cabin quiet, Jack and Olivia sat together on the porch swing he had built, watching fireflies rise from the meadow grass. I had a letter from Emma today, Jack mentioned. She's expecting another baby in winter. That's wonderful, Olivia replied, genuinely happy for her sister-in-law. Her boys will be good big brothers. Jack hesitated, then continued. She also wrote about a situation in Denver, an orphanage closing, children needing homes. He glanced sideways at Olivia. Apparently there are twin boys about Lily's age. No one wants to take both together. Olivia's heart quickened. Jack, are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we have room in our hearts, and if we add that second floor we've been talking about, we'd have room in our home too. He took her hand. What do you think? Olivia thought of the girl sleeping peacefully inside who had brought such joy to their lives. She thought of the cabin, steadily expanding with their love. Mostly, she thought of the man beside her who had shown her that family could be created in many ways. I think, she said, squeezing his hand, that heaven isn't finished with us yet. Jack's smile was all the answer she needed as he pulled her close under the starlit sky, their future stretching before them, different than either had imagined, but more beautiful than they could have dreamed. 5 years later, on a bright autumn day much like the one when they first met, Jack and Olivia stood hand in hand watching their children play in the yard of their now substantial home. Lily, 9 and confident, directed her brothers, the twins, Matthew and Mark, and the newest addition to their family, 3-year-old Ruth, rescued from an abusive situation in a neighboring town. Mrs. Peterson says the Jenkins family lost everything in that fire last week, Olivia mentioned, leaning against Jack's shoulder. They have that baby girl, just 6 months old. Jack chuckled, wrapping his arm around her waist. Are you suggesting our family isn't complete yet? Olivia smiled up at him. I'm suggesting heaven might have more plans for us. Then who are we to argue? Jack replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. After all, I did promise to show you what heaven could do. As Ruth toddled over to them, arms outstretched, Olivia lifted the child, her heart full to overflowing with the family they had created not by birth, but by choice and love and faith. It wasn't the life she had once envisioned, but standing there surrounded by their children, with Jack's steadfast presence beside her, Olivia knew it was infinitely better than anything she could have imagined for herself. I love you, she whispered to her husband as their children's laughter filled the air around them, the sweetest sound she had ever known. Jack's eyes, still as blue and true as the day they met, held hers with the same unwavering devotion. And I love you, Mrs. Avery. Today, tomorrow, and all the days to come. In that moment, with the sun warm on her face and her family gathered close, Olivia felt the last echo of her old grief dissolve completely, replaced by the profound understanding that she had become exactly what she was always meant to be, a mother after all.